This is a difficult time of year to have programs because people are still vacationing, and there are actually a lot of events going on tonight. So there's a lot of competition. So we are especially grateful that you're here with us tonight, because we have an incredible program for you to talk about what is happening with workers, especially here in Pierce County, and how even what's happening at the federal level is affecting all of us. And we have some of the key union activists and leaders here to tell us what's going on. So we want to just make a couple of acknowledgments. We want to thank Dave Hackett. Where did he go? There you are, who has been so wonderful to support our rent here at the Tacoma Universalist Unitarian Church. And Dave, do you want to come up and just say a couple words?
Welcome all to the Unitarian Church here. Just a compatibility check on our values. I think most people that are interested in Indivisible would like our values. How many people think that honoring diversity, including working for equity for people and including as many people as possible in prosperity is a good thing? Okay, you're at the right place. Thank you.
And I want to introduce Ellen Floyd, who is my co-chair. And Richard Burton, who is from PSARA. And Richard and I really did the work of putting this program together, and so it's been great to work. We love working with PSARA. Our values are really compatible, and it's just really been fun. This is our second program we've co-hosted.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Richard Burton is my name. I am from PSARA, and that stands for Puget Sound Advocates for Retirement Action. I am not retired, and I'm a member. I even got a shirt. So you don't got to be retired to be a member of PSARA. It's a multi-generational group working for retirement security, Social Security, traditional Medicare, and environmental justice and race and gender equity, among other things. So we're very happy and proud to be a part of this event tonight. And if you're curious, please come to our next meeting, September 11th, Thursday, at the Central Co-op on Pearl Street, or you can check out our website, not very creatively called PSARA.org. You can find more information there. Anyway, I'm glad you're all here tonight. It should be a good opportunity to learn more about what's going on in labor in the Tacoma-Pierce County area.
Even though we have so many groups represented here tonight, there are many groups that aren't represented here, and everyone will be aware that one of the groups is immigrant labor, which are in the most precarious position of all of us. And we decided that it was important. We have some connections, and we're going to be setting up a separate program about that. So that will be upcoming. And so I'm really privileged to introduce Nathe Lawver, who is from the Pierce County Central Labor Council and has been an activist in our area for many, many years. So I'm sure you all know him. Please welcome Nathe.
All right. Thank you for the introduction there, and PSARA and Indivisible Tacoma for hosting this evening. I'm the Secretary-Treasurer of the Pierce County Central Labor Council. We're the largest labor federation in Pierce County. To kind of give an idea, I'm a Star Trek guy. We're like the United Federation of Planets. And so we have the most diverse group of individuals coming together for common cause within Pierce County. We've been around for 135 years. Our organization is a democratically run organization. I can only be here and speak on their behalf because they elected me twice so far. Every 2 years, they come and do that, and they say that's okay. And that's, to give you a sense of scope, that's 112 different local unions that affiliated with us. When I started just a little bit over 2 years ago as the Secretary-Treasurer, we had 96. So we're a growing organization, and we're really excited about that. Now, I want to kind of set the stage, and our panelists, if you might want to turn your heads a little bit here. How many folks here at one point in their working career was a member of organized labor, paying dues to a union to represent them? All right, great, that's great to know. And for those of you that were union members, how many of you showed up to at least 2 local union meetings there? All right, this is a good group. And of everybody else in the room, or maybe how many of you did an activist activity as a union member? Went on a picket line, we're on a contract negotiation, all right, okay. Good to see you there, Marty. Hi, Marty. Yeah. Marty and I go way back. She was there when I was just a baby activist. So, great. So it's, you know, it's important to get that. And I have some national polling to kind of set the stage of where we're looking at right now. This was shared just this morning by the AFL-CIO President Liz Schuler. She is also a fellow Pacific Northwesterner. She grew up in Portland, Oregon, was a member of IBEW, and our president of the Central Labor Council used to work in the field with her, which is amazing. What we find in the most recent polling we've done is that the American people have lost faith in every institution of this country. You just go across the political parties, the Supreme Court, religious institutions, corporations, and the media. Every single one of these institutions are underwater in terms of trust with the American people. But there was one incredible piece of data that was shared. Nearly 2/3 of Americans believe in organized labor and the labor movement. They believe in unions. And when you look at the most vulnerable workers, the wage workers that are represented, and you ask them, you know, what's one thing that you have faith in? 75% of those workers believe in unions. They believe that joining a union is their best shot, and it is their best shot to a better life and a more secure life, a brighter future for their families. That's what labor's about. So to paraphrase Zoolander, this might be, unions are so hot right now. And that number hasn't been that high in decades. And we're going on about our 3rd year of that number being that high. So, and we know that states with the most unionized workers, Washington State is number 3. Look out, Massachusetts. All workers make more money, more people have health care, and there are greater investments in our schools. And we know that these people live better because of unions. Now, tonight you get to listen and learn from experiences that are happening here on the ground in Tacoma. We have esteemed panelists for our dedicated union members doing work in nursing, education, retail, and in the public sector of our federal workers. And we have one incredible community organization working to make life better for all workers in our community. And I just want to close with this. When we stand together, we are unstoppable. And when we fight together, we win. And when we believe in each other, we build a future all workers deserve. Because when we fight, we win. Because when we fight, we win. When we fight, we win. Thank you.
My name is Michael Whalen. I am an organizer with United Food and Commercial Workers Local 367. We represent about 8,000 members across 6 different counties, including the beautiful city of Tacoma, Washington, from industries of grocery, retail, cannabis, and arcade workers. And I just want to start as well by thanking PSARA and Indivisible for allowing myself to speak on behalf of our organization and express and to give the information of what is happening right now in our union. Also want to give a shout out the rank and file member who was going to speak today. Her name is Diana Flores. She was unable to make it today, but she is one rockin' shop steward with the Safeway stores in the Puyallup area. And yeah, I just wanted to start with a couple things going over what my union has been up to lately to give a real good snapshot into the world of grocery workers. So who here has shopped at Safeway or Fred Meyer here in the city? Awesome, awesome. So how many of you, by show of hands, just by chance, heard about the recent contract negotiations that were taking place at these stores? Awesome, okay. Yes, very recently we had settled our contract with Fred Meyer and Safeway, and what we did with this previous contract bargain was much different than all of our previous contract bargains. And just to give, I guess, a little bit more context about myself, is spending 10 years in the rank and file membership with Local 367 coming out of the Fred Meyer stores. Shout out to my two coworkers over here, Colton and Laura, organizers with me. They also come out of the Fred Meyer stores. So going into this contract bargain this year, we knew we were dealing with issues of low hours and scheduling issues. Obviously, pay is always an issue. And something we did was a partial open negotiations with this employer. Just by a show of hands, who in here has heard of open negotiations? We did a similar version of that, and what that is we invited members of our union and community allies to come to the bargaining table, witness and watch the process, and really wanted to engage our members to come out to really witness this process. And this created, one, transparency for our members to really understand and see the process of bargaining and what is going on. Because I know for myself, it seemed like something very disconnected until I was able to, one, be on a bargaining team. But if I didn't have that opportunity, I would not know what it really is like at the bargaining table. And through these negotiations, we were able to really improve our collective bargaining agreement when it comes to scheduling, staffing, and safety. Being now the employer having to meet with us over staffing, as it's now considered a safety issue under our contract. And then my favorite, when I was a union rep for the stores here, is a clause in our contract, 3.7.1. It has to do with availability of hours. And I think that got massively strengthened, and it is an absolute tool to really fight for workers in the shop floor and really push to have more hours and make more money for workers in the shop floor. Something else that you're going to hear a lot more about as well, which was also part and helpful during our contract campaign, was the Worker Bill of Rights. And towards the end of my speech here, my coworkers will be passing out some pledge cards for you all to fill out, pledging if you wanted to vote yes. And you'll hear more about the Workers' Bill of Rights if you all don't already know about that when Ann speaks on it today. Something else that our union is been taking part in is external organizing. Who here has ever shopped at Marlene's Market and Deli over by the mall? So they recently those workers won their union drive at the beginning of the year, and we've been in a hard contract fight from that time, trying to get them a first contract. The employer has, we've been in bargaining for 4 months, and what really spurred them to organize was having a new owner. A company from California named Lassen's had came in and bought the company and made multiple changes, which really changed the conditions that workers were dealing with, such as not being able to, having to lose their PTO, and then only full-time workers then accruing PTO after that, which was a big blow to workers. And what's PTO? Paid time off. Paid time off. Thank you. And so that has been a big fight, as well as dealing with a bully boss inside of that store, and just overall a company that really hasn't been taking them serious until recently, when we have had an action in front of their store, 8 of the members coming out helping leaflet the customers. Right now, our big ask is around a community petition, and this community petition is urging the company to bargain in good faith, and my coworkers are going to hand these flyers out right now that has a QR code that will take you to the community petition to sign. Now, hasn't been publicly put out there yet fully, but I will want to let you all know and invite you all that on September 17th at 3 p.m. in front of the Marlene store, we will be holding a rally, and this is to put as much pressure on the company as we can. And on top of that, members from the store will be marching in to deliver the petition to the boss there at the store, demanding that they bargain in good faith and respect for workers there on the shop floor. And so, yes, inviting you all to join us for that day. We are going to be having our brothers and sisters in other states where this licensed company operates, putting some pressure on the company with these same leaflets, asking them to sign the petition as well. And same with the Federal Way store. So that'll be fun. And then just moving forward, also, one of our wins this year was an arcade in the Olympia area, Insert Coin. They are in bargaining currently. They've had one bargaining session. Things seem to be going pretty well. Their big issue was harassment in the workplace from a manager there, and just overall wanting some dignity on the job. And right now it seems like things aren't as tough as Marlene's with that company when it comes to that. But I guess just to give another snapshot for our union, we've had a real change in leadership at our union, and something that I appreciate, and if this is some of your first interactions with our union, myself, something that we have moved forward with is this idea of whole worker organizing, where we know our members, they are dealing with issues at work of whether it be a bully boss and a contract violation, or low pay and bread and butter issues. But we know when these workers go home and they want to spend time going to their kids' PTAs, going to church, coming to community events such as this, even as simple as just taking their kids to the park. We really want to be thinking about, and I know I do when I do and move in spaces and do this work, thinking about the whole human being and the whole worker and how we can really move forward and try to improve conditions for life of human beings as a whole. And yeah, so I'll just yield my time here. And if you all wanted to scan the QR codes, if you haven't already, to sign that petition, I would encourage you all to do that today. And just want to give another thank you to Indivisible Tacoma and PSARA and Julie and Richard and Ellen and Lynn for inviting me and my organization to this. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, wow, there's a lot more people when I get up here than what I said down earlier. Hi, everyone. My name is Jared Richardson. I work for the Washington State Nurses Association. I just want to give a big shout out to Indivisible Tacoma, PSARA, for hosting this tonight. It's Labor Day coming up next Monday, which is super exciting. It's a time that we should really spend to focus on all the victories that we've won, especially through union work for workers in this country. We still have a really long way to go, but we've come really far from children working in the coal mines to where we are today. So this Monday, I just ask that you think about all the hard work that's gone in. Also want to give a big shout out to Pierce County Labor Council and to the Washington State Labor Council. The work that Nathe and Alice and April Sims are doing there's a reason that Washington State is third in union density, and it's because of the hard work that our AFL-CIO members are doing. So just a little bit more about me to get started. I'm a dad. I am a father of 2 girls. I will have been married 19 years this upcoming December. And I'm a veteran, and I served in the Army. My wife is an active duty Air Force member who's about to go on a 7-month deployment to the Middle East. And we're members of Pierce County. We live here. This is our family. This is, unions are made up of all of us. And then personally, I'm also a proud member of Teamsters 117, who organize WSNA internally. So we just came to our own contract. A little sad about that. First I really need to say that I am here speaking on behalf of myself, and I'm saying that instead of for WSNA specifically, because I'm going to maybe say some things here that are a little politically charged. Because on top of all those things that I'm also really pissed off. When I was asked by Julie to do this, and she thought to come up with some of the things that nurses are facing, the list is so long. It is so incredibly long right now. The same issues we were facing when I was at nursing school, when I was a bedside nurse, when I came and started working for WSNA, all those issues still exist, and we're working on those. And then on top of that, there's just this garbage being piled on us every single day from this administration. It is every time we turn around, there's something new. Just a couple days ago, I think it was the Fifth Circuit of Appeals ruled that the National Labor Relations Board is unconstitutional. This board that has existed for decades, that has been protecting union members, that has been, some of the rulings they have made with both Republican and Democratic presidents have improved labor standards in this country, and they're just being ruled unconstitutional. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I think a lot of it, as Nathe was saying, the unions have become so much more popular that we are now we've always been a target, but we are now even more of a target for this administration. It is, I come from Utah. My home state of Utah just passed a law that banned public service employee unions. So if you work for the state, you work for the University of Utah, where I went to school, you can't be in a union. And the voters there put a referendum to ban that law, and the state there is holding a special legislation next month to repeal the law so that referendum can't go through, and then they can replace the law. And it's the tactics that we are seeing everywhere across this country right now are anti-union and they're anti-worker. And the way we change that is by first taking back Congress in 2026. And wherever we can do that, we need to help that. We are fortunate, I like to say we're fortunate to live in an area with progressive values, but we're not fortunate, we made that happen. But we also need to support those in other areas. I live out in the 25th legislative district, where we have 2 Republican state legislators and a Republican senator. Tacoma, we're fairly fortunate to have progressive leaders, but we can do better in Pierce County as a whole. Okay, sorry, I got a little sidetracked there. Keep thinking about all these things that are making me angry, and I could talk about it all day. Issues that are facing nursing. So the biggest issue that we've seen and continue to see is short staffing. Nursing is a good job. Nurses here in Washington State, in the Tacoma area, by the end of these contract cycles that we just signed, are going to be making about $50 an hour as a new grad. That's good money. And yet we're still seeing a 27% shortage in the state for nurses. And that's because it is a hard job. It is often an unsafe job. I'm sure you all heard about the news at Allenmore just recently. Yeah. It is. You are 100% right. There was the shooting at Allenmore just recently, and workplace violence protections that we continue to fight for at the table, and we're getting a little bit more here or there, are not going fast enough. And I strongly believe that if we would have got some of the protections, Allenmore is not unionized, we're working on that, but if Allenmore had a union and they had the workplace violence protections we have at St. Joe's, that we have at Tacoma General, where they are unionized, that may have been able to be prevented. Nurses still get abused by patients every day. Washington State passed a law to make it a crime to abuse a healthcare worker, but it's still happening all the time. On top of that, the burnout. Almost half of nurses don't expect to see themselves in the career in the next 2 years. Which, if you think about the amount of school that goes into it, the amount of effort that goes into being a nurse, that we see that kind of turnover is insane. I am very privileged to represent the nurses here at Tacoma General and the Mary Bridge NICU nurses. Before that, I represented the nurses at St. Joe's here in Tacoma and St. Clair's in Lakewood. And I also represent the nurses at St. Joe's in Bellingham. And the issues that we see, we're seeing everywhere. At St. Joe's in Tacoma, we were able to get, well, it was the second one. Virginia Mason was the first, which is also WSNA Hospital, the first ever weapons detectors in a contract in the emergency room. And you go to St. Joe's now, you have to go through a weapons detector to get in the emergency room, and that's because of the union nurses standing on a picket line in the cold to make it happen. Other issues that we are facing, I'm going to get to some federal stuff here in a second, but other issues that we're facing here in Washington, and a big one that I have personally been involved in and want to continue to advocate for, is the lack of parity for international experience. Virginia Mason Franciscan Health, which before that was Catholic Health Initiatives, which before that was Franciscan, and these mergers and acquisitions are their own problems, has had a long-standing policy, not a policy, just a practice of giving international nurses, so nurses from the Philippines, nurses from outside of the United States or Canada, so brown and black nurses, only 50% credit for their experience. And there's a lot of Filipino nurses here, and they go through the same training, they have the same accreditation, they pass the NCLEX. And then to come here and have 10 years of experience from the Philippines and to only be given 5 years of credit was terrible. We were able to win in this last contract we didn't get justice. Justice would be reparations for those nurses for all the way back, but we were able to get all those nurses to be brought up to the correct step. We had nurses go from step 9 to step 25 on the scale, which is huge. And now we are currently fighting to get them back pay for all those years that they did not get paid. And we want to see that same thing happen at Tacoma General and at Mary Bridge. The nurses there right now, this is why I'm speaking on behalf of myself and not WSNA. Multicare is running an indentured servitude program right now. With the program with what they're doing with bringing Filipino nurses in, putting them on contracts, 3-year contracts, and putting them at the bottom of the wage scale. They don't get to build seniority. They don't get to build up any of the things that they should be. And it's terrible what they're doing. So that's one of the things we will be fighting for. We will be coming into negotiations here at Tacoma General and the Mary Bridge NICU in about a month from now. I don't have any actions for those for you yet because we haven't got to the bargaining table, but I can tell you for damn sure that there's going to be actions. I fully expect us to be picketing in January. I fully expect that Multicare to try to take away the patient-to-nurse ratios or the nurse-to-patient ratios that are the only ones in Washington State in a contract. Tacoma General is the only hospital in Washington State that has patient ratios in their contract. And, I think union work is incredible across the board, but one thing about healthcare unions is that we're protecting our employees and we're protecting all of you. Who wants to go to a hospital where your nurse has 8 or 9 patients? That is not safe. It's not safe for you. It's not safe for the nurse. It's not safe for anybody. The only person it protects is Bill, the Multicare CEO's bottom line. That is it. And so we're going to continue to push hard for safe staffing in every single one of our contracts. In 2024, or it's 2023 now, Washington passed the hospital safe staffing law, which was supposed to be ratios when it started, and through the legislative process got diluted into these things that we're calling hospital staffing committees. And now, 2 years later, we're just getting to the point where these are starting to be enforced. And what we're seeing from the employers is aggregate data that does not represent. They're saying that nurses are getting 95% of their breaks, that they're meeting the staffing plan 98, 99% of the time. But they're not sharing the data with us on how they get it. So if there's an action plan, action thing I can have you do is to write your legislatures and say that you want to see the data that they pass in the law that they pass that these hospitals are required to give. Because they're not giving it to us. They're not giving it to the nurses. They're saying, believe us, you definitely everyone's getting their breaks when we know for a fact that it's physically impossible that is happening. Run a little bit out of time here. A couple of things I wanted to hit on was from a national level. The HR 1, the big ugly bill, the pile of trash that we all had shoved down our throats is going to devastate healthcare. Healthcare is already so broken, and this might be the nail in the coffin that finally tears it down. Like I said, I represent the nurses at St. Joe's Bellingham. We had a meeting with their management the other day, and they said just in the 3 hospitals they have in Whatcom and Skagit counties, they are expecting a $6 billion loss just from this bill alone. That's 3 hospitals, 2 of which are pretty small. $6 billion. Yeah. In Whatcom County, where St. Joe's Bellingham is, 50% of the babies born there last year were born using insurance through either Medicare or Medicaid. In Skagit, it was 60%. That's the only hospital they have to go to. Unless you're going to drive down to Everett, that's the only place they have to go to. And we don't know where. It's going to be really hard to fight for wages when Medicare and Medicaid are cut even more. So the biggest action you can do is to make sure that we get Democrats back in Congress in 2026 so we can try to pull this back. At least stop it in one way or another. I could go on all day long. I'm sure I'm running out of time.
I'd like to know if mental health workers are covered by your union.
So it depends on the facility, but yes. So if they're an RN, yes. WSNA only represents registered nurses at this time. We represent some LPNs and some nurse practitioners and a couple different clinics. But if they work in behavioral health as a registered nurse, then yes. Lori Lee. Yeah, let me talk about that for a second. So I worked for, my first job as a nurse was for the VA. I worked for the VA in Salt Lake City. And they had a union there. It's part of the Federal Employees Union. And in the last month or so, as Trump disbanded the union as soon as he could, and then it went through the appeals courts and all this thing. And the final ruling, it hasn't gone to the Supreme Court yet, but we're all pretty sure the Supreme Court's going to rule. But the last appeal ruling said that Trump had the right to disband the VA nurses union. It is no longer, you don't have a union to be there anymore. Which, on top of a hiring freeze, on top of already underfunded stuff, veterans are not getting the care that they need. Like I said, I'm a veteran. Actually, as of today, I was appointed to the American Federation of Teachers Veterans Committee, so I'm really looking forward to working with them on that. Thank you. And we're not holding up our commitment to veterans. We're not holding up to them at the VA. We're not holding up to them in the community. Is the care that is out there is it's not terrible, the care that's being given. It's the care that's being offered. I would have worked at the VA for the rest of my life if I could have stayed in Utah, which is kind of the next thing I want to talk about, where we're seeing pain as nurses. We have to talk about nurses being a calling, and I believe it is. Nursing is a calling. That also gets used against nurses in a misogynistic way, in my opinion, that, you don't deserve more wages because you're not doing this for this, you're doing it to take care of your patients. That doesn't take away the moral injury that happens when we can't take care of our patients. It doesn't take away the moral injury when we're parents. My oldest daughter, Ellie, who is, some of you know, she's a wonderful human being. She graduated high school a year early. She is going to college next year in Japan in January, which is insane to me. And she has been transitioning since she was 12 years old and receiving care through TRICARE for no problem that my wife has continued to stay in the Air Force for. And yesterday, we got told after 2 months of being pushed around that no, they will no longer provide care for her, period. Not at all. There's going to be there's already blood on their hands, but there's going to be more blood on the hands of this administration for trans children who are no longer able to receive care. Luckily, I have a good union job and I have my own insurance, so it's going to be a pain getting her transferred through into new care, but it is evil. It is cruel, the things that are happening in this administration. And when you're a nurse and you're at Seattle Children's and you're told you can't provide that care anymore that you've been providing to your patients, that moral injury doesn't go away with a higher paycheck. And if I knew how to fix that, I would tell you how to fix it, but I don't. I can tell you that showing up places like this and continuing to advocate is the right thing to do. Continue to vote progressively and continue to let people know that we're not going to stand for this. I'm sure I've used up more than my time, but I would love to take any questions if anyone has any questions about.
This is a question for everyone, and I know how hard this really is to make happen, but I think collectively as Indivisible and all the people that are organizing, we're all starting to have chatter of a general strike. Are there any unions that are talking about a general strike? And I know it would be really hard to do that, and people need support to do that. But is that ever feasible?
I'm going to once again very much clarify that I'm speaking on behalf of myself and not WSNA. But it is not I know UAW, United Auto Workers, has been pushing for this, and it is not a coincidence that many of our contracts are lining up to end in 2028. And I'll leave it at that. And we are far away from that in this country to be able to do that. But personally, I'm supportive of it, and I think a lot of our contracts are headed that direction. Okay, I appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Well, our contract is up in 2028 too, so it wasn't on purpose. But yeah, Jared, I'm going to echo a lot of what Jared said. One being that I'm also not speaking officially for our union leadership. So thanks again to PSARA and Indivisible for putting this on, especially keeping it in my neighborhood. I live over by Lincoln, so it was a 4-minute drive. I appreciate it. And I also love that we start hosting worker-specific events down here in South Tacoma in the South End, because oftentimes they're not. They're in places where the students and the families that I teach at Mount Tahoma High School are never really going to get to. So my name is Mike Williams. I'm the current Vice President of Tacoma Education Association. I was on full-time release last year, and I was voted again to release this year to do some union organizing. But typically, I'm a high school history teacher. Just by a show of hands, are there any educators out there or former educators? I don't know why. I just vibed that there were a lot of y'all out there. So thanks for coming. And I was torn between sharing a little bit about what we did as a union last year and a little bit about the impacts of the current climate on teaching, but I think I decided to go with the latter because I get into the weeds on the former. TEA is a unique union. I've lived in Tacoma for 20 years, but I came into teaching in Tacoma just 3 years ago, and the climate in the union, in both good and bad ways, sort of set me off into a feeling or a need to take some kind of leadership. I never thought I'd run for VP or anything like that. But TEA is kind of stuck in a moment where certain members kind of want to maintain what we call a service model, a union, sort of like the way you would go with a credit union. You kind of want the union to lay off you, leave you alone, and then if you have major issues, you want to be able to call on leadership and have them bail you out. That's kind of a basic service model union. So that certainly exists in our local, and then we have folks on the other side who are really trying to transform TEA into what you might call a social justice, or I might call a community union. Similar to WSNA, teachers unions have the opportunity to really support students and their families through contract bargaining, through what they teach, through the way they treat students, all of those kinds of things. And so there's kind of this moment in Tacoma Education Association, just speaking honestly, where this union is going to go in one of two directions. And so the way that we've approached the national threat, the state threat, and actually the district threat on teaching has been sort of this contradiction. And I just want to be honest about that. So we're kind of working through what kind of union we want to be. We're ways away from WSNA. Or 367, or even some of the local EAs around us. So in coming to office, we had threats from the national level, which a lot of y'all know about, the state level, which y'all know about in terms of finances, not being able to get progressive taxation. But what folks don't understand is how much the local context played a role in our year in our contract bargain. The notion that the school district has no money was the overwhelming conversation in the city, and it was one that not all members believed, and so that caused some spirited democratic conversations in the union. It led to some really dope actions. I don't know if anybody went to the school board rally that we had. That was great. Yeah, and I saw a lot of you out there, so I know you're there. But it also meant that our contract bargain didn't go as far as a lot of us wanted to go in terms of supporting students, families, particularly those most vulnerable students in special education and our ML students, what you might call ESL or ELL, immigrant students. Yeah, the year began with this notion that we were going to have a contract up. What we tried to do is to exercise some of the union muscle that had gone dormant in the local. Again, this was fueled by the national, state, and local forces. But also teachers make a crap ton of money. So $50 an hour, try $90 an hour. And you have very stable middle-class workers who don't always want to respond to the national, state, or local emergency. But we did try to exercise some union muscle. We internally rebuilt some of the building rep structure and began flexing some power in buildings. So this looked like really fighting for special education teachers to get para-educators in their rooms so that they can deliver the federally mandated minutes. So if a student has an IEP, has a certain number of minutes specialized for a special education teacher. The district was not providing any para-educators. They were ignoring the contract. Right, last year, the contract said that you could only have 30 students in a on a caseload for a special education teacher. We had one teacher who was at 44. And so she was actually breaking breaking federal law every single day. And the district was just like, we don't care. So that was kind of what we're facing in special education. In terms of our immigrant students, our EL, ML, ESL students, our contract had one line in it. There was nothing in there regarding their education experiences. And those things obviously were things that we were working on. But again, we were running into the idea that the district continually said they had no money. So what we tried to do this year is to connect to labor partners. So I was at the WSNA picket, but we had members work on the Workers' Bill of Rights, go to Marlene's, do a bunch of stuff with labor partners. We began building a coalition amongst the 7 unions that bargained with TPS, Tacoma Public Schools, and began meeting with them and talking about how none of us, from Teamsters to Tacoma EA, can enforce our contract with the district. That every single one of the 7 unions, carpenters, could not seemingly get a handle on how to enforce our contracts. And that will be a big thing this year about how to talk about doing so. And it's going to lead to a lot of actions that we're going to need support with you on. We also connected to faith communities with the help of Mike over here, Mike Roberts. We began working with the historically black churches on the Hilltop, Tacoma Ministerial Alliance, to actually work on the LRC or the special education case. They went out with the superintendent, had conversation with him about the need for paraeducators, which was really great. We continue those conversations with faith folks. We also began to connect to organizations like Asia Pacific Cultural Center, Mi Centro, other culturally specific, Oasis, and other folks about trying to connect to them and hear about the experiences of the families and students that they work with. And that led to a contract campaign that ended up with a few wins. One of them was paraeducators for our special education teachers. That was the one that I was most proud of. And a bunch of things that we didn't get. And now we're 3 years off, and we're kind of in a moment where we have to take stock as a union and consider what are we willing to do to prioritize students and their families and prioritize working conditions. So it's a different story from our other 2 unions in that we are really kind of in a moment where we're going to be soul searching. So yeah, I don't have a positive one. As a history teacher, I want to just open up for questions. I know I'm not supposed to, but it's easier for me to do that, yeah.
I want to know who sets the salary levels for the leadership of the Tacoma educational system. 25 people are making in excess of $200,000 a year. And if you look at the total amount, that could have easily covered the shortfall.
Yeah, I built hopefully, maybe that's the graphic, the one that I built that looked at so between 2019 and last year, the average income level raise, this includes cost of healthcare, for those leadership positions at the central administration building was roughly 35%. So this was at a moment where they were saying they had no money. Who sets that is themselves and the school board. The school board okays that. So again, in the school board, they argued that that was the competitive rate for leadership in education. Yeah.
So is the school board then responsive to teacher needs, or aren't they elected?
Yeah, they're elected every 6 years. So there'll be an election this year for one of the school board positions. TEA, spoiler alert, is not going to endorse the incumbent, mainly because she is very pro-education, very pro-trans children, pro-queer kids, all that good stuff, but is terribly not pro-labor. When we approach the school board, what they oftentimes say is that we don't third-party deal and refuse to communicate with the union leadership. So we aren't going to endorse her. The rest of them are somewhere on their journey, of a 6-year term. So one odd thing about Tacoma is the school board is a 6-year term, which I can't imagine how you could commit to 6 years as a school board member. So the school board generally just rubber stamps what the school district gives them. Yeah.
So how can people in the community support the school then so that they can have better response from the school board?
Yeah, so I was telling Colton here from 367. How can we help the teachers, correct? So I think the issue is that when a lot of you, our educators, know when you go on summer break, a lot of the momentum union work sort of collapses. And so that's why I don't really have a campaign as we start getting into right now. How many of y'all know where Stadium High School is? They currently have a high school teacher who has 50 students in their class. So that's 20 students over the contract. So at some point, the dam's going to break, and we're going to need some support and contract enforcement. What that looks like now would be probably connected to class size, connected to special education, and that's why my only ask of you all is to follow our social media. Also, if you're part of an organization, ever want to have a cup of coffee or something like that, feel free to talk to me afterwards. We don't have any current contract campaign or any campaigns going, but once the school year starts, we'll start developing those. So, yeah.
Is there any truth to like ICE trying to come in and take students away? I feel like I heard that somewhere and I didn't know if that was true or not.
It was not true. There was the question was, has ICE been around schools? Kind of, yeah. So last spring, there was a incident on Hosmer Street or off Hosmer Street that basically made Baker staff and Stafford Elementary School staff hold students after school and not let them on the bus because ICE was apparently at an apartment complex. They were not near the schools. There's a group of us called Educators for the Common Good. We held a training last night with Association of Raza Educators in LA and Unión del Barrios in LA, UTLA members who do community defense of undocumented students and schools with undocumented students. They do school patrols. So the teachers go around 30 minutes before and after and patrol the area. That's something we're thinking about doing. Again, that's not an official TEA thing, but that's something that we're considering doing and tapping into Weisson's rapid response. But no, it wasn't that huge. So we had a question in the very back. The question was how does TEA feel about safety officers and how much they get paid? Is it the school safety officers? Yeah, so after we called George Floyd Summer, I believe, and I don't know how TEA members who were there longer, I believe the union split around the idea of removing school resource officers from campuses. Right now, there are no school resource officers in Tacoma. There are safety officers, and there's a level that's sort of just below police. They can tap into police officers, but there is no current Tacoma PD folks on campus. And how union members feel about that is very typical TEA, is that there's members who would love to bring back school SROs and some that would not. Right now, Lincoln High School, did you all hear about the shooting at the end of the year? The bulk of youth shooting towards the end of the year, although many of them who were killed were Mount Tahoma students, most of them went through Giadroni and Lincoln. So Lincoln is a staff that's currently self-organizing around how to stay safe without without bringing in SROs. So they held a rally the day before, the second day before school. Before school, they did a sort of little walk-in, and we were able to get the district to the table to negotiate some safety protocols. In a couple of weeks, we'll have that meeting. So, yeah. So how is what's happening at the federal level impacting learning and teaching in Tacoma is the question. We have students who aren't coming to school, particularly on the east side in South Tacoma. So definitely after the concern about ICE, we had students not come. I know at Mount Tahoma, where I teach, students were saying that they don't feel very comfortable. Some of the other incidents around, this is isolated, so I don't want to make this a huge thing, but we had staff in buildings try and narc on educators who have like queer-friendly posters. We had a member at a middle school who had a NEA-sponsored Black Lives Matter poster, a queer-friendly space poster, and something about educators for Palestine. And they were reported to OSPI by another staff member, not a union member, by another staff member. The principal came in and stupidly took photos of the posters in the middle of class. And if y'all have ever been to First Creek Middle School, you know those students will throw down. So they were like trying to jump the principal, being like, don't mess with our teacher. So there is, not as much as in a red state, but there's definitely, there's pockets in Tacoma that are very conservative. So there are educators, I think, who are dialing back. I'll say this just from my perspective, the conversations around Palestine are the most difficult to have. For educators in Tacoma. I don't know a lot of educators openly talking about Palestine, which is kind of a shame. And I know that part of that is fear and backlash around that. So I would say that that's probably the biggest concern. All right, thanks, y'all.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Jackie Walton, and I am a federal employee and also a treasurer for Local 3937. That means I work with Social Security in particular, and our local covers Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Alaska. Now, I do want to give the disclaimer, I do not in any way speak on behalf of Social Security. I am speaking as a union rep and to a certain extent for myself. So just so you all know that, you probably wouldn't have been confused, but. And I came to Tacoma in the late 90s to attend PLU and left for a few years and came back and have been here ever since. And I have worked for the Social Security Administration for 16 years now. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going on with federal employees, some in Washington and some, because we're federal, can't be limited specifically just to Washington. But a brief summary of what I'm going to say. The situation for federal workers in our country right now is crap. As you are probably aware, the conservative politicians have worked for years to try to destroy the federal government, and they are currently having more success than they have had in a long time. And so they are trying to destroy agencies and are taking actions, some legal, some illegal, and are having a lot of success with it. So the situation has been pretty awful. Now, as I'm sure you all know, federal employees are the infrastructure that helps make this country run. Through the EPA, we help make sure that people have clean water and clean air to breathe. We provide national parks. We give you free weather information. FEMA helps people who've had national crises. Social Security is there for people who are disabled or who are survivors. So for parents who die, their children are supported. And obviously for people in retirement, Medicare provides health care. And on and I'm sure that you all are familiar with many of these programs. Almost all of them have been under attack. In October, I believe, of last year, there's someone who is now in power in the government said that his goal was to put federal workers through trauma, and they have done their best to do that. And so we've had to deal with random reductions in force. In my agency, we had a whole bunch of people who were in positions. They decided that we didn't need people in places like HR or payroll, or so basically everyone at our regional office, minus a small handful of people, was sent out to the offices to do our frontline work. Well, I've been a frontline worker my entire career with the agency. I totally support that, but let me tell you, we also need payroll. And they've made, for our agency in particular, they've made all sorts of changes that are not necessarily, some of them are not even necessarily bad changes, but they've done things like say, hey, we're going to change your job title and give you a completely new position, and we're going to tell you this an hour before the end of the workday. Oh, by the way, this goes into effect tomorrow. And I'm not sure how many of you heard about this came out in the news in the last couple of days, but the information from our agency that DOJ put on a private insecure server that has information. Now, it's hard to tell from the news. It said at least 300 million people. There are 341 million people in the US, so I don't know if they're just a lucky 41 million or if they're the rounding error. And they said all of Social Security's information and your social name and date of birth. I don't know which one it is, but either way, this is a huge breach of trust. And obviously I'm more familiar with my agency, but in agency after agency after agency, they are making stupid decisions, getting rid of vaccines or doing their darndest to, cutting funding for scientific research. I mean, who knew that in the war against cancer, we'd be coming down on the side of cancer? Trying to get rid of our NOAA weather service and cutting NASA missions that are already en route, where there's no reason to stop getting the data. I could go on, and I'm going to try not to because, well, I don't want to depress us all too much, and every single agency has a story like this. But basically, they want to destroy any agency they can and get rid of, so federal workers as a whole, obviously this is not true for everyone, but tend to be pretty solid and dependable people who want to have a stable job and serve our country while having decent benefits and a paycheck that's less than what we'd get in the private sector, but still enough to support our families, right? And they want to get rid of us because they don't want people who are competent doing these jobs. Or that don't agree with them. But yeah, they just want to get rid of people as much as they can. They're also, the federal labor force is one of the mainstays for many people who are people of color, people who are queer, people who are disabled, people who are basically anyone who is not a cis straight white man to be able to have a good solid job, good benefits, and to be able to do something that's meaningful. And the actions taken against DEI have been rough. So, and I can say at my particular office, the number of people that we have, so maybe, let's see, we've got, think about 45 people now, so we had a whole bunch of people from our regional office reassigned to us, and out of all of those people, we have maybe 4 or 5 people who are cis straight white men, and everyone else is from a different race, is woman, and we also have many people who are in there who are queer, and so on and so forth. So this is something that's been tough across the board. We are a little bit luckier at my agency just because we are so popular that it is hard. So if you talk about cutting Social Security, people will freak out. But there are other agencies like the EPA, for example, that haven't been so fortunate, or the USAID that was terminated, NOAA, NASA, and so on. So now AFGE has been pushing back against many of these things and has had some wins. So there have been things like we've been able to, there was a number of people from our regional office that were RIFed, the reduction in force, and the union was able to get them back. And so, I mean, it was a huge waste of time and money as far as they were on paid leave for a couple of months, and all that time when they could have been doing their jobs, they were just sitting at home. But at least now they're back at work and they're able to start doing some of those things again. And we've been pushing back against some of the numerous contract violations and trying to protect our staff, and through doing that, protect the public and the programs that we serve, because just about every federal worker that I've met is deeply passionate about what they do, right? Obviously, it's not going to be 100%, but all the ones that I have met. And one of the things that we hold to very strongly, that is something I've heard many times in the union, is united we stand, divided we beg. And so we are trying very hard to support each other, support different agencies, support our employees, and make sure that we can continue providing the service to the public that we all want to provide. Now, a couple of things that you're able to do. One of the things that I always feel like, oh, this is such a small thing to do, but I've been told over and over again that it really does help, is call your reps. And if you're able to, call every day or call once a week, or set up some sort of thing that you do on the regular, because there are people who hate the government and hate federal employees that are calling on the regular. And if you can push back against that, that would be great. So call Patty Murray, call Maria Cantwell, whoever your House rep is, Marilyn Strickman, Emily Randall, some of you might be from other areas, contact them on the regular. One thing that you could contact about is pushing for us to keep our union coverage, pushing against reductions in force, pushing against cutting missions, cutting scientific research, cutting is just what they want to do, push back against that. Because I have seen some things that people called about on the regular, and we were able to stop that. And if you are wondering what's going on with the feds, you can look at Fed News on Reddit, or there's a news newspaper. It's also called Fed News, and it has information about things that are going on. So if you just glance at that to see, is there something new that has happened in the last couple days that I have a strong opinion about? And I encourage you to look at agencies that maybe aren't the most popular. I mean, yes, call about Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. They need to hear that the people of this country care about those programs. But call about the FDIC, call about the Bureau of Labor Statistics, call about the National Archives or Smithsonian, or call to support the IRS. I mean, people like to hate the IRS, but taxes are what we use to run the country. That's how we get the money. But push back. I've done a lot of calling about scientific agencies, NIH, HHS, NASA, NOAA, so on and so forth. And then second thing, I've heard of conflicting experiences. So not long after this administration took power, so let's say mid-February, our call center members started getting calls saying, I hate you and I'm so glad that you're gonna lose your job soon. And as you can imagine, that was incredibly devastating for the people who heard that. On the other hand, I've also heard of a number of people going the other way and saying, thank you so much for what you're doing. I know it's really hard right now. Thank you for continuing to show up, things like that. So this might not be something that's going to change things across the nation, but if you get a chance to do something like that, if you talk to someone who is a federal worker, and also any of the other people that we talked about that have talked tonight, grocery store workers, nurses, teachers, just say something kind and encouraging, because I know that I've had weeks when the words from one of my clients were what kept me going and brought me back into work. So, okay, my time is very close to being up. I will take 2 questions, if anybody has any. Yes. Thank you. Yes.
I'm kind of curious if for those who have been laid off, have they gotten any form of resources?
Okay. So the question was, for those who have been laid off, have they gotten any form of resources? To the best of my knowledge, there has not been anything that has been provided by the government, although I'm familiar mostly with just my agencies, so don't quote me on that. I know there are some states who've done things like saying, hey, we want to hire federal workers, please apply for these jobs, things like that. So, and that is something that has been very helpful. So, yeah, that's it as far as I know. Okay, so I'm talking about what can the community do for those who've been laid off. It depends a little bit on your situation. I would say anything that that can help with networking and helping people get jobs, because those are hard to find right now. So even if that just means saying, hey, I heard that this was available, or we're going to be doing hiring soon, or things like that. And obviously, if you have someone that you're close to as well, you can always do things like buy grocery cards or gas cards or things like that. But if you have any way to help connect people to jobs, because the thing is, it's really hard right now to get jobs because the employment market is rough. And the problem with having a bunch of federal workers lose their jobs is that many people have overlapping skills, and those aren't necessarily, the skills of a bureaucrat are very specialized, and they're not the same thing as the skills of a nurse or a grocery store worker or a teacher, right? So if you have a lot of people suddenly flooding the market with the same abilities, all competing for the same handful of jobs, that's tricky. So anything along those lines that you can do, there's not like a specific drive to set things up for like here's where you can give money or job tips or something like that. But that would be what I would recommend. So, okay. So question is about being fired versus laid off, and this is going to be the last question. And so difference between being fired and laid off, and what have we been told? I do not think the president is particularly careful with his words and with the difference. So fired is generally going to mean you lost your job for cause, and laid off is you lost your job because it wasn't available anymore, there wasn't money, things like that. So to the best of my knowledge, generally people have been laid off, so which is good because that means you can apply for things like unemployment and it's less of a black mark against you in your future job search. I think in the beginning they were trying to say that some of the probationary employees were fired, but they ended up, my understanding is they had to back off on that because it wasn't for cause. So, but if you're really, really curious about that, look it up because that's what I remember, but it was not something I dealt with directly, so. All right, thank you so much for your time.
Hello, everybody. My name's Dorn. I currently serve as the elected chair of Tacoma for All, and I am here tonight to give you a little bit of an update on the Workers' Bill of Rights and some background, and then a little insight into the current legal challenges facing the Workers' Bill of Rights. I speak only in my own capacity, like all of our other speakers tonight, and really excited to just share with you kind of where things are at in the current legal landscape. So the Workers' Bill of Rights is an initiative led by UFCW 367. How many folks here have heard of the Workers' Bill of Rights already? Okay, awesome. Tacoma for All is very proud to be one of many supporting organizations that are cheering and looking to the leadership of UFCW 367 and just really excited for what we see as an incredibly necessary step to make lives better for working people here in Tacoma. So we're here tonight, we're talking about workers, we're talking about what's happening with the working folks. One of the things that I think we all know and we can all agree on is that the cost of living has gone through the roof, right? So housing is more expensive than it's ever been. Healthcare is increasingly expensive. Groceries. You fill your cart at the grocery store these days, and that's, a charge that we didn't used to see, right? And so along with that, wages have not kept pace, and working families are suffering. And so the Workers' Bill of Rights is a citizen-led initiative that seeks to raise the minimum wage to $20 an hour, adjusted with inflation. It seeks fair scheduling protections. So workers should know their schedules. We're asking for 14 days in advance instead of what's currently happening where a lot of shift workers are yanked around. It makes it really difficult to plan your life. It's hard to raise a family, to be there, to pick up your kids from school when your employer can just change your shift with hardly any notice. We're also seeking workplace safety protections as well. So this is a really important initiative. I'm so grateful to the leadership of UFCW 367 for bringing this forward. It's something that we desperately need in our community, in my opinion. To get an initiative on the ballot, and some of you may know, Tacoma for All is a grassroots organization. One of the things that we're best known for is running and winning the Tenant Bill of Rights in 2023. And so I can tell you from personal experience, it's a lot of work to get something on the ballot. In this case, UFCW 367 and supporters gathered 10,000 signatures from folks in Tacoma. So just think about the population and what that means and how many people were excited and wanted to see this and wanted the chance to vote on it. Those signatures were turned in and should, under normal conditions, secure a spot on the ballot so that voters have the chance to decide. And that's really what citizens are asking for when we run an initiative. We just want to vote. You get those signatures, you get them turned in, and the idea enshrined in our city charter is that you should have the democratic right to make up your mind. Not city council, right? Not some other organization. In fact, the Citizens Initiative stands as a counterbalance in a lot of ways, in my opinion, to city council. A citizens initiative is an incredible and powerful tool when your council doesn't agree with you. And you want protections and changes in your community that your council is not on board. That's when you gotta run a citizens initiative. That's when you bring it forward. It's designed to be a check and a balance. However, what we ran into more recently with the Workers' Bill of Rights is a situation where we were opposed, and still are, by Tacoma City Council and also by the county. Have folks been following the lawsuit around the Workers' Bill of Rights? Who here is a little bit of familiarity with that? So After the signatures were turned in, the county took 7 days to start counting them. They sat there with these signatures, 10,000 signatures from Tacoma residents saying, you know, we want the chance to vote on workplace protections, on raising the minimum wage, on dignified jobs and employment. They took 7 days before they even started counting a single signature. Now, their argument in court at a recent hearing was that this is a normal custom. They normally take this long. But that's not required by law, and they did this knowing full well the timeline for certifying the signatures and letting council know. And the county still sat on those signatures. So you can guess where this is headed. I already previewed this for you. There is a lawsuit pending. And the lawsuit says, county, you took too long. Like, you knew that these signatures needed to be certified so that city council can then start their clock. Now, city council has 30 days from when the signatures are certified by the county. The county says, yes, you have met the requirements of a citizen's initiative. You have turned in sufficient signatures. That then starts a 30-day clock for city council to either vote to adopt the citizen's initiative. So the council has the chance to just make it law. They can simply pass it into law, or if they decline to pass it into law, they must send it. The charter requires them to send it to the next available election ballot. And so what happened in this case is that 30-day clock started, and city council on day, I think it was 26 or 27, held a council meeting. Now, I believe that they had their minds made up at that point. There were study sessions kind of along the road, along this journey, where they expressed, you know, the pressure that they were feeling from the business community and a desire to, you know, what I ultimately think comes down to listening to corporate interests and, you know, big business. And those interests are often opposed to the interests of working folks in Tacoma. So council expressed a lot of unwillingness to listen to what the voters wanted and to listen to the people. At that council meeting, they could have voted, they didn't. They called a special meeting. A special meeting was held on August 8th. This meeting took place several days after the end of the 30-day clock. And the council did this knowing that they had run out the clock and that they had passed the county's deadline. And that now any vote on a resolution to send this initiative to the ballot would miss the printing deadline. And that's what happened. Council voted at the special meeting to send the initiative to the county and told the county to put it on the ballot, knowing that they could not comply at that point. And again, in part, this is the county taking days before even beginning to count signatures. And then also what I view as council running out the clock, intentionally obstructing and delaying this process, which again, I believe is supposed to be a check and a balance. It's supposed to be an avenue towards democracy, towards us having the chance to have a voice in our own communities when our elected leaders won't. And so for all these reasons, UFCW 367 and community partners, including Tacoma for All, decided to file a lawsuit. And that lawsuit alleges those two complaints. So we were in court yesterday and had the chance to hear arguments from both our attorney and the city and the county. And one thing that really stood out to me about that hearing is the judge expressed how deceptive this was on the part of council. The judge said, and this wasn't all, I will be very transparent with you, there were aspects in this hearing that were not so favorable, and I'll tell you where this is all going in a minute. But that part really stood out to me, that the judge called it deceptive. The judge said, you knew when you adopted this resolution to direct the county to place it on the ballot, you knew that you'd run out the clock and you couldn't. And the council did that knowingly and willingly. And the judge said that's deceptive when you know something's not possible. And essentially, right, they're just kind of covering their butts at that point. They're just going through the motions as required by the charter, but knowing full well that it was going to cause this problem that we're facing today. The judge did not make a ruling yesterday, and in fact made a ruling today. And what we learned is that the court is not putting the Workers' Bill of Rights on the November ballot. Yeah, we are disappointed in that choice. We're awaiting a further ruling. The judge said he would explain his reasoning, and there's still a couple places that we could go from here. I am personally hopeful that the Workers' Bill of Rights will appear on this February ballot as a special election. Now, the city and county is arguing against that. The city in particular has taken the position that because the charter, the exact language of the charter says that the city must direct the county to put the initiative on the next available ballot, they're saying that November is the only available ballot, and the city is taking the position that essentially all of these signatures, these 10,000 people who wanted the chance to make a decision on higher wages, more dignified standards of living in Tacoma, that this should just be crumpled up and thrown out. That's the city's position. That's it. All of this work, this effort, folks in the streets, you know, it's endless volunteer hours to bring a citizens initiative like this, endless resources and money and time that are invested, and the city's position is, too bad. You know, better luck next time. And to me, this is a travesty. This is an absolute travesty. I think it's really a threat to fair and free elections. I think that essentially it amounts to voter suppression. I believe that this is absolutely unacceptable. And in a democracy where we are supposed to have these tools, we are supposed to have these checks and balances, I think that this is just beyond acceptable. So we'll find out if the Workers' Bill of Rights will appear on the February ballot. The judge will make another ruling early next week. There's always a possibility of appeal. UFCW 367 and community partners will make that decision. February is a tough time to run a ballot initiative. It's a tough time to get out the vote. And I know that there are so many folks in this room who have door knocked and who have done that get out the vote work. It's hard in the middle of winter. It's cold and it's rainy, so it's less than ideal. I really do believe that there is an incredible and growing amount of community support. I am so hopeful that if this makes it on the ballot, that we will see victory. I believe the people of Tacoma want higher standard of living and higher pay. But that remains to be seen. And, you know, we don't know how the judge will rule. So a lot of things are possible. A couple things that you can do to support this. I think it'd be amazing to reach out to your elected council members. And if this is something that disturbs you, let them know. Let them know that you expect democratic, fair, free elections, right? And it's the right of citizens to use this tool that is in our city charter without interference, without delay, without obstruction. So I would encourage you, if you have a relationship, if you don't, like, reach out to your electeds. Let them know how you feel about this. And then also, I would also encourage you to follow social media. So UFCW 367, Indivisible, Tacoma for All will all be amplifying any messages that arise out of the ruling. We may call for a community rally. We may circulate a petition. There's a lot of different actions that are being considered right now and a lot on the table. So it would be wonderful if each of you could just stay tuned to kind of the messages being pushed out by this organization and be ready to stand up and fight. Join the working folks of Tacoma and push back on a city council that is completely determined to delay and obstruct and just deny citizens their right to vote. So thank you so much. Oh, one last thing. If you've got a pledge card that our UFCW 367 friends passed out earlier, if you completed this pledge card, if you could just go ahead and give your filled out pledge card to Julie before you leave tonight, that would be fantastic. Oh, question or comment?
Two things. The other thing that City Council's doing, and maybe you can speak to this a little more, but they're setting up this task force that the mayor created with business and whatever to create basically an alternative watered down policy. And they're going to vote on the composition of this task force on September 9th at that meeting. And I know UFCW is going to put out the call basically saying, hey, this shouldn't just be stacked with business interests and cronies of the mayor. This should be, workers should have at least half the representatives on this task force. And so there's going to be a push to get groups to sign on. So any groups here or individuals to sign on to that letter before September 9th. So that's just one other way folks can do. And then the question, and what else is Tacoma for All up to in the next months ahead?
Tacoma for All is really excited to be working on another ballot initiative. We are bringing a ballot initiative next year to bring social housing to Tacoma. So please stay tuned for more information from Tacoma for All and all of that. Can we do, Julie, a couple more questions, okay? Or yeah, Jackie.
So you talked about hearing from all organizations that you mentioned. Where do you have social media presence, and is it blue sky for any of you? Because that's what I'm most connected to. Obviously, speak to other social media as well, but I know that's a newer one, and people aren't necessarily there aren't as many organizations on there, but that would be lovely if you were there.
Yeah, the question is anyone on Blue Sky? Tacoma for All is not, to the best of my knowledge. Ty, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's a great idea. Folks should get on there.
So where are you?
Facebook and Instagram are really good ways to connect with Tacoma for All, and then I think that's true of Indivisible as well, and UFCW 367.
Who in the county was responsible then for the delay? Is it Linda Farmer?
The lawsuit does name Linda Farmer in her official capacity, which is standard for a lawsuit. But you know what, really, I put this at the feet of the county as a whole. There are multiple folks working in the elections office. They are in communication and coordination with the city. That was very clear in the hearing yesterday, and that they talk to each other all the time. There is no rule requiring them to delay, and yet they chose to. Jared?
Yeah, you mentioned about the charter a couple of times. If this doesn't get on the ballot, do you see any success with we're going to be reviewing the charter for our once a decade charter review coming up soon. Do you see any pathway there, or trying to get ballot initiatives easier or anything like that?
The question is there a pathway to changing the law through the charter? The next charter review is 9 years away. We did one last year.
Oh, that's our definitely county.
For the county charter, that is coming up, yeah. I'd be very curious to talk to the folks who managed to get on the charter committee for the county. I think that's really worth looking at. I think in some ways this is a little difficult to build into a charter because it does involve workplace protections that can change and are a little bit dynamic. Like, for example, the minimum wage would be a tough thing, maybe. I'm not sure. I think that's absolutely worth looking at. That's a great idea. Yeah, Richard.
I'm suspicious about kind of off-the-books communication between city council members and between county council members and betwixt and between the two. And not only because I suspect that they were texting one another or whatever else, but that in so doing they were violating the open meetings law that requires that sort of stuff be discussed at some publicly announced meeting or whatever. So I'm just wondering if there's any way to require or request through public disclosure, the information that they clearly must have been conveying to one another.
Yeah, Richard's raising the thought that maybe there was backroom deals. I don't doubt it. I'm also very suspicious. One of the problems with a really quick-moving legal proceeding like this is there's not a lot of time to do discovery or public records request. I think I'm going to go put in a public records request because I want to know too. Unfortunately, most of the legal suit will probably unfold before we have those answers. So the question is, how do you find out who's against it? That's a great question. I think in general, business communities have not embraced these measures. In other cities where folks have run minimum wage initiatives, it's often the chamber. So you'll kind of see folks organized through the Chamber of Commerce. I'm not sure that is exactly what's happening here. We have a number of groups in Tacoma that represent business interests. I do believe that these folks are talking. I believe, organizations like the Hospitality Association are very interested in maximizing their profit margin, keeping their labor costs low. Unfortunately, that has not kept up with the times, and that's become untenable and just a very difficult situation for working class folks.
Is there a way to get the names of these business groups?
If you go to a Tacoma City Council meeting and you list, community forum, or on September 9th, this will be on the agenda because council will be voting on creating the task force that Tyron mentioned. There will be a number of folks who will be in the audience commenting, and they represent, various business and corporate interests in Tacoma. And so that would be a really good place to gather intel. So if you're looking for kind of specifically who is opposing this and who's standing up, what business names, that would be a great place to find out.
The Chamber of Commerce reps, they have come to a couple of city council meetings and spoken clearly in opposition. The Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you so much, and thank you for coming to this, what I think was an absolutely fabulous program. Just a couple of announcements. First of all, the yellow sheet has some of the upcoming events, and some are not on there, like the Marlene's rally. And on the back, it's actions that you can take, some of which people mentioned tonight, but also there are other ones as well. One of the things about this last thing is that we have an election going on right now. And there are people running against the city council people who have done this. And if you would look at our endorsed candidates, we are out door knocking a lot, and door knocking works. Our candidates came through very well, and the mayor is going to also be an important factor here. One of the candidates for mayor is on the city council right now. And the other candidate is not, and is more progressive. So getting that word out to people and coming and door knocking with us, we so far have probably knocked somewhere around 4,500 doors before the primary, across not only Tacoma, but also Lakewood, Stellicum, and we are going to be knocking probably double that amount in the next couple of months. We need you to come and help us do that. Door knocking is fun. Every door is an adventure. We can also, depending upon what happens here, we can help with whatever kinds of project needs to happen next at our doors. We can get people to sign the pledges. Please get those pledge cards back to me. The other thing that we can help with is money. Some people left. I was sorry about that, because I would like to ask you to donate tonight, because we would like to give a donation to the Workers' Bill of Rights. So if you could pass out I know we have some little buckets. Maybe people can, here we go. Really, really would appreciate anything that you can do to help this project. We have a couple of expenses that we have to cover for tonight's meeting, but other than that, we plan to give the donation to the Tacoma for All Workers' Bill of Rights. So the other thing you can do is we will have this program. It has been recorded. And Dan gets it ready very quickly, so we will have it up and available to share out. And if I can get it to all of the people who spoke tonight, and you could share it out with your folks, and PSARA will share it out. It'll be on the Indivisible media, I think, and we might want to think about what are some of the actions we want to put with this video, or we could break it up into some pieces too, and that's a possibility. We do have some lovely cake over here and some sushi. We'd love to have you come and share those with us and interact with the people who have been able to stay. So thank you very much, and please share information about our monthly meetings. I know this one had a lot of conflicts with other things tonight, so we're sorry about that, but I think we have a lot of potential for sharing this out. Vicki? I'll repeat what she said. So we have sign-in sheets for door knocking, and we will mentor you into door knocking. You don't have to go out there by yourselves. We will help you door knock, and if you can sign up for that, or as a driver, if you physically can't door knock or mentally can't door knock, although I think you really can, then you can help drive, because sometimes there are turfs that have long driveways and things like that, so it's really helpful to have a driver, or they're far apart. So please join us, because when we have 8, 10, 12 people go out on the same day, we can knock 500 doors in a day. So it really makes a big difference. And we have a lot of excellent candidates, and our candidates come through. We really knocked a lot of doors for Janny Hitchin last year. She had a really tough race. We've got some tough races going on this year. We have some candidates that are being harassed, actually, by the other side. So we really need your support for doing this work. And if you can bring a friend with you, that would be even better. So let's have some cake together. Thank you.